Welcome to the Dibley Diaries for this week. This week we're going to be thinking about patronal festivals and the nature of your church. The 10th of August is the patronal festival for Saint Lawrence. Lawrence was martyred in 258, so that's about 1767 years ago, with no allowance for the Gregorian calendar mischief. But there we go. So Lawrence was martyred. He was martyred 4 days after Pope Sixtus II and the other deacons of Rome, because Emperor Valerian and the prefect of Rome wanted to get their hands on the money that Lawrence had charge of. He was the treasurer, and it was his job to look after the money and to give it away to people who needed it. So when this demand was made of Lawrence, he said, actually, hang on, I need 3 days to get all the treasure of the church together. And they were like, okay, you can do that. What Lawrence did, of course, was get all the money and give it away. He gave it away to everybody who needed it. He got all of it and gave it away to as many people as he could in those 3 days. Those were the last 3 days that he had. He knew he was going to die, but he gave it all away to people. And then he brought people who were poor or who were disabled in some way or ill. He brought them and said, these are the treasures of the church. These are the treasures of the church. Now, the Roman authorities were not very pleased with that, so they executed him. There is a tradition that he died by being roasted over a gridiron, although there's some good arguments that this is a spelling mistake or a mistake in copying, missing the P off a word in the copying out of something. So we don't know if he actually died over a gridiron or not. Probably he was decapitated. That tends to be what they did in 258. So he died having made this big contribution, understanding that the role of the church was to give the money to the poor, but also to remind the poor and kind of dishearten the disabled that they were God's treasure, that God really loved them. So that was the real focus. So I've been thinking this week, does your church actually celebrate its patronal festival? Who is your patronal saint? And do you do things which he would be proud of, or she would be proud of, to mark the patronal festival? Now, we are at church at St Lawrence's having a service and a bring and share meal, but the church itself does host a whole host of different community groups, and it's an important place within the community where it is. I was wondering if there was something more tightly tied into the story of St Lawrence that maybe we should be doing especially for the patronal festival. I know some of the gruesome amongst you might be suggesting a community barbecue, yeah, or something, but that's the real challenge, isn't it? Is there something for you in your own church community that you could be doing to celebrate your patronal festival, which will speak to your community at what wider and speak to your villages about what your patronal festival is about and who your patronal saint is? This week on Thought for the Week, we're thinking about St Lawrence, and we're going to be thinking about a passage from Matthew 6, which is often set for St Lawrence's Day. Part of it is used in the Book of Common Prayer Holy Communion service, which I use 3 times a week for years and years and years. It is in the Book of Common Prayer language, a bit of a tongue twister, so I'm going to revisit that, but I have got the words for it, so I remember them properly. Lay not up for yourselves treasure upon the earth, where the rust and moth doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither rust nor moth doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through and steal. And then that passage goes on for verse 21, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I have a deep theological point to make today about this, but we'll come to that later. But this gospel passage and thinking about St. Lawrence, they really tie together. They are a challenge for us on the purpose of money, or perhaps the purposeless of money. We'll come to that. But first of all, I wanted to talk about the two mugs that I brought with me, two of my favourite mugs from my extensive mug collection. I'm just going to put down my reminder of the words and pick up my mug. So this is my mug. It's a yellow I am so many things mug, and it has some really important things written on it about people being the treasures of the church. It says, I am God's very good idea. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I am pleasing to my Heavenly Father. I am outrageously loved. I am not alone. I am a child of God. I am the apple of God's eye. Well, that's what it says if you're right-handed, but if you're left-handed, I only realised this week it says different things. It says, I am God's masterpiece. I am unique. I am made in the image of God. I am enough just as I am. I am a work in progress. I am an overcomer. I am grateful. Then when you tip the mug up, it says, you are God's very good idea. I'm going to put this one down out of the way. So I was really thinking about that, and all those phrases, all those words talk about us being God's treasure. They don't say it explicitly. If you want to say it explicitly, you need to buy the teal coloured mug. I think it's the majestic one, where it talks about being God's treasure. I am God's treasure. So Lawrence was right. Lawrence was absolutely right that the people that he brought are the treasure of the church. The people who make up the community of the church, however poor or needy or unwell, they make up the treasure of the church. Lawrence was right. But of course Lawrence did the really good thing. In those 3 days when he knew he was going to die, he got all the money that he could to those who needed it, because he knew that money can be transformational. Which comes to my Batman mug. Now, my Batman mug is really tiny. It doesn't hold anything like a decent amount of tea. I mainly have it because I want to remember what it says on this side. It says, always be yourself. Unless you can be Batman, then always be Batman. Always be yourself. Unless you can be Batman, then always be Batman. Now, Batman is a very interesting superhero because Batman, Wayne Bruce, he doesn't have any special powers. He hasn't been bitten by a radioactive spider. He can't do any special things, but what he does have is a lot of money, and he spends it to do good. He spends it to do good. So he has all this money, and that's what he does. Now, Batman's on a difficult emotional journey after his parents died. One of my advisors, my special superhero advisor, suggests that if you want to watch a Batman film where Batman actually makes some emotional progress in the film, then what you should do is watch the Lego Batman movie. And having watched the Lego Batman movie, I kind of agree with it, that it is one where Batman makes some progress. But Batman, like St. Lawrence, knew that the best thing to do with money is to spend it to do good, to change the world for a better place. So these are my 2 Thought for the Week challenges for you this week. One is to think about all those sayings on the mug, to think about being God's very good idea, and to think about what does it mean that you are a treasure of the church, that you are a treasure of the church. And the other part 2 of your homework is to spend some money this week, however much or little, to change something for good, to do some good with some money this week. Then you can emulate Batman stroke St. Lawrence and change the world for a bit with the money. Now, back to the deep theological thought. So remember where it says at the end, in verse 21, it says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. If you keep your treasure on earth, if you keep your treasure on earth, you will be in the brokenness of earth. Your heart will be in all the brokenness of being on earth, and you will be broken-hearted. If you keep your treasure in heaven, heaven by nature is wholeness, holiness and wholeness, then you will be wholehearted and not broken-hearted. The Dibley moment of the week this week is based on the issues of calling your child after a patronal saint. I had some friends who called their child Nicholas after St. Nicholas of Myra. Some of you will know about his great generosity. He, in particular, the legend says, rescued a family of girls whose father had no money for a dowry. They were really, really poor, so he was considering selling them into enslavement so they'd at least get fed. St. Nicholas, a very practical person, threw some money either down the chimney or through the window so that they would be able to have dowries and that they wouldn't be sold into enslavement. So that's good. We all know where that led. Nicholas turned out, who was named after St. Nicholas, turned out to be a very rambunctious child, trying to sort out his problems physically, getting on with things in that way. The parents later found out that St. Nicholas at the Council of Nicaea in 325 had a theological argument with Arius and either slapped or punched him, according to legend. So be careful when you name your child after a patronal saint. Well, that's it for the Dibley Diaries for this week. I pray that you and your village, however large or small, have a really blessed week where you can enjoy the best qualities of your patronal saint within your community.